Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of Tilted. Today's topic is Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to be talking a little bit about the basic classes, races, as well as a few monsters you could run into. So sharpen your swords, strap on your armor, and get ready to get tilted. All right, guys. So you want to jump right into it? We're here with Brandon and Chip, as well as myself, JC. What's going on, guys? So let's jump right into it. How'd you guys get into D&D?
I started playing 5 years ago because a friend of mine came back from college and said, "Hey, I'm going to teach you how to play Dungeons and Dragons, and you don't really have a choice."
Brandon, what about you?
I got into it when I was actually home visiting Chip and said friends, and they happened to be playing one time, and they asked me if I wanted to play, and I was like, sure, I'll give it a go.
Biggest regret of your life, or do you guys love it? Is one of those things where you get
Um,
really hardcore addicted to it?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm hardcore addicted to it, but it is definitely one thing that I do enjoy doing a lot. Uh, I actually recently picked up DMing, so that's a new experience for me. But for the most part, I think I'd enjoy being a player more.
So you mentioned DMing. When we get into what we're going to talk about next, what is Dungeons and Dragons? Then I want you to guys go ahead and do a little bit of a deep dive in there. So explain a little bit, just kind of give a 10,000 feet explanation, kind of what is D&D, DMing, all that kind of stuff.
So basically, Dungeons and Dragons is an interactive RPG tabletop game. So it's all dice based. Depending on your DM or dungeon master, essentially the person who runs the game. Um, there might be maps, miniatures. It might all be theater of the mind. So just pure imagination. Everyone has to come up with the details in their own head. But yeah, essentially you create a character, your dungeon master DM is the one who sets out the story for you, and um, the DM doesn't really have like a role in Dungeons and Dragons as far as like physicality of it. He's there to describe the consequences to the actions that you take in the game. So if your character walks in the town and say you want to punch someone in the face, then your DM will go about describing what happens as your character does this. So now maybe there's a guard nearby and he sees it, so now he's going to come over and investigate what's going on and why you're doing what you're doing.
That's awesome. Chip, do you have anything to jump on that?
No, he pretty much got it. I prefer DMing now over being the dungeon master. I think it's a lot of fun. Because once you get into the meat and potatoes of Dungeons and Dragons, you constantly have um, different characters in your head that like you're like, oh, this would be a cool build, this would be a cool idea for a character. Where when you dungeon master, you don't need one character. You can just like throw it all together, and it's really fun making up a whole story. Like when you make up a story, it's not just like, you do this and then you do this. Like you create a whole world and a universe with kingdoms and lords and bad and villains and good guys and anti-heroes and the whole kit and caboodle. It's a good time.
Cool. Well, talking a little bit about you were jumping into the classes and things like that. For those of us, I've played once myself. For those of that are not ready remotely to DM, and you guys kind of just went through this with me, but do you want to jump into the classes, the roles, the races, synergize with them a little bit? Yes, you want to jump right into barbarians?
Barbarians. They are, I think, the funniest class in the world. I've never personally played one, but I've been meaning to. They are your typical just like caveman, like this guy that's just guy or girl out in nature that just like runs around and just is this bloodthirsty killer. I love them because literally, like, you take a level in barbarian and one of your class skills is immediately illiteracy. Like you become a barbarian, you can't read. And that's the whole point. They're not a talker. They're not a smart person. They just run in with their axe and just like buried into your head. That's what they do.
They're your Vikings, nomads, uh, wandering warriors, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Bards.
Brandon, you want to take bards, or do you not know a lot about bards?
No, I could do bards. So basically, my knowledge with bards are they are like like you would see in other video games or something. They're just like people who go around telling stories and stuff like that, but a lot of their stuff is like buffs and debuffs, so they use like magic the magic of like songs and voice and stuff like that to either debuff opponents so that like maybe they'll have a reduction to trying to hit you and your allies and stuff like that, or maybe you buff your own allies where their next damage roll gets like a +2 or a +3 or something like that. And so they do have combat capabilities as well. They do have some damaging spells, so they're not just constantly buffing and debuffing, but a large majority is it's kind of a support class for the most part.
Bards are
Cool.
usually like, oh, sorry, I just said the
No, go
bards
ahead.
usually like role playing wise, usually like the face of the party if you have one.
Yeah.
They have really high charisma, which is like being able to talk to people. So you roll into town with a bard, a fighter, a barbarian, and a rogue, and it's like, well, I'm the bard, and these are the greatest adventures in the world. Love
Your
us. Like
your
that's what you
typical
do.
hero singer essentially. He's
Yeah,
gonna speak everyone
fun.
up.
Yeah.
Cool. Clerics.
Clerics. They are. I call them battle priests. But you can do a lot of different things with them.
Mhm.
They, worship a god, and they have healing spells, um, and a lot of uh, like against undead spells. They have a lot of things that are really useful for certain evil classes and things like that. They can do well in battle. They like carry on maces and swords usually, but they're 9 out of 10 times your healer if you have one.
Brandon, you have anything else on that?
No, I think he pretty much nailed everything for as far as clerics go.
We should have jumped in this a little earlier, but um, average size of a party to get a really well-rounded, because it seems like we're talking a lot about like, and we still got a number of characters to go through, I believe, through the bards, clerics, barbarians, where it seems like each person has their own kind of role within the team. So, what is a good size of a party to get together for a campaign?
I would say probably 4 is ideal.
Yeah. I think for the most part, the books balance around having 4 or 5 players in a group to go through the adventure and stuff like that. I personally agree that's probably like a good spot because if you get up to like 8, 9, 10 people, then like a single round of combat becomes like super long. So you have to manage 10 players in addition to like all the monsters and making sure there's enough monsters to actually give those 10 players a challenge. So now the DM is essentially managing like 30 plus characters in like a single round of combat. So it gets pretty insane.
It
But
gets really bad.
yeah, but you can also do smaller sized parties. Like I personally am only DMing for 2 people, and I think that's kind of neat because now I can actually specialize the story like to them. So like I know exactly like what weaknesses and stuff like that those 2 characters have, and I can play on those. I can play on their strengths, and they can have obviously like random NPCs jump in and be like, "Oh, hey, I'm here to help with so and so," or go retrieve this item or whatever.
So you mentioned the books. From what I understand, is there's a couple different, um, not thesauruses, but versions of Dungeons and Dragons. Correct? Can you guys do a little bit of a deep dive into that?
Oh boy. All right. So when Dungeons and Dragons came out in I guess it was the 70s. I don't know
Yeah.
my D&D history too well. There was Dungeons and Dragons, and every so often they come out with new versions that update monsters, have new classes, have new like preset stories you can do. Um, and it doesn't change a whole lot, but it does change some of the rules from time to time. So like I play version 3.5, 3.5. I know Brandon plays what 5, right?
Yeah, I do 5e for the most part.
So 5e gets a little more simplified in my opinion. 3.5 is very, very complicated, but once you get it, there's a lot you can do with it. But it's generally the same game from top to bottom across the editions.
Yeah, the easiest way I would describe it is 3.5 has been around long enough that there's tons and tons of like expanded modules and stuff like that. So customization for your character is essentially like through the roof. There's so much that you can do with it. There's like limitless possibilities. But some of the systems that they built for that can get really weird really quickly and then things start to become like super hazy and it's hard to understand like what they were trying to get at, whereas 5e is taking pretty much a lot of the good points of 3.5 and just like simplifying them so it's super easy to understand and pick up really quickly and you don't have to go through like this massive learning curve to get 3.5 down.
Cool. Thanks for jumping on that, guys. Well, speaking of easy to learn, things like that, anybody who's ever played Diablo will certainly have a love of the Druids if you played Diablo 2, the expanded pack. So yeah, you want to jump into the Druids for me?
Druids are your nature lovers. They're your hippies. They run around. They run around with an animal companion. They gonna get like a wolf or a hawk. Or once you get to high levels, really weird stuff. But yeah, they run around and they're like the Lorax. They speak for the trees. It's pretty much it's what they do. I don't know what else to
Yeah.
tell you.
Yep.
Yeah, the druids are very, as he said, like very all natural, like nature lovers. Not necessarily nature lovers, but they're very in tune with nature and generally have abilities like talk to animals, things like that.
They can
They,
wild shape
yeah, they
into
generally
different
have
animals.
a distaste of like any artificial materials, so like a lot of metals and stuff like that. They're kind of against it and shy away from it because they don't see it as natural. And yeah, a lot of magic and stuff like that. So
What role would they have in combat? What predominantly are they more of a fighter? Are they more of like a sorceress, arcane user, something like that?
they'd probably fit more into the arcane side of things, but using wild shape like Chip had mentioned, they could definitely get in there and be physical because you could obviously turn into like a giant bear or something and start running people down.
Which is terrifying, by the way. Just like imagine me 6 foot, 200 odd pounds, and then all of a sudden I'm a bear as big as a house.
These
Yeah,
guys
Yeah,
sound like the way to go. Makes me want to
yeah,
play Diablo again.
yeah. It's a good
yeah,
time.
pretty nuts.
Yeah.
The fighter.
So fighter, in my opinion, is like the easiest class to learn. Like it's just
Mm.
the most generic. Just it's like your guy that can have a bow, a sword, an axe. He has a bunch of different weapons on him. He
Your
learns how to
stabby
fight.
stab guy.
Yeah, he runs around and just stabby stab slash slash end of fighting.
Yeah, I feel like the fighter's kind of like a catch-all. Like if you're not sure like something specific you want to do, then you can either go the route of like just using ranged weapons or going completely ham, swords out with armor, whatever.
The next class, I'm definitely realizing some symbolism and shared classes from Diablo and Dungeons and Dragons. I think they might have played a time or two. The monk.
Uh,
Monks are they're an interesting class. They
Mhm.
don't use weapons outside of like quarterstaffs. I don't think I don't think they do. They can a couple other ones, but it's usually just quarterstaffs. But their thing is like literal hand-to-hand combat. Like they use
Mhm.
their hands. They run around and they judo chop you in the neck. And
your typical Shaolin monk movie
yeah,
characters essentially. Like they're very
yeah.
they're pretty like stereotypical in the way
Mhm.
they play.
Yeah, but they do get fun at later levels. So like you think running around and like smacking people is kind of boring, but as you get higher in levels, you can do things like key blasts, which are basically like kamehamehas, and like
Yep.
throw fireballs at people with your hands.
Catch
See, I
arrows and
instantly
throw them
thought
back at the
Yeah,
opponents.
Lee Sin. So all I'm thinking of is, can you
more,
do
That's
the Reddit kick?
more or less. Yeah,
yeah, essentially the same thing.
I love Lee Sin. Um, yeah, not to get into League of Legends yet, but
different show, different show,
yeah,
different.
different show. All right, as we keep rolling on here, the Paladin. What would
Brandon,
be the difference
Um,
between the Paladin and the Cleric per se?
uh, I've only played a paladin once, so I don't have too much experience with it, but other than that, it's your generic. You got undead, you're hiring a paladin. They're gonna go in there, they're gonna do tons of radiant damage. They're probably gonna be pretty tanky because they're gonna have some sort of like medium or heavy armor on. They're gonna have like axes, swords, things like that, and they're just gonna be channeling divine energy through that and hacking and slashing their way through skeletons, zombies, any sorts of undead or anything.
Yeah, they're your white knight kind of guy. Like usually paladins are there to fight for truth, justice, and the American way, or truth, justice, and insert, God's ideal here. And they just go around and kill evil things. That's what they do.
So next, I'm thinking what I think is Aragorn, the Ranger.
A rangers, they're
Tell me
fun.
they're like Aragorn. Tell me they're just like Aragorn.
Aragorn is actually like the perfect
Yeah,
example of a ranger. It's literally just your rugged outdoor survivalist kind of guy that's either using a bow to do things or going at it with swords, but typically found in like leather armor or something like that and going to town.
yeah, and they're trained in like he's like outdoorsy stuff. So like they'll have I don't know if it's technically an animal companion, but they can have like an animal with them. They'll have their friend, like their wolf, their hunting buddy with them. They can track. They can walk through the woods without being followed. They're your Boy Scout. If Boy
Mhm.
Scouts like ran around with bows and arrows and swords and stabbed things.
All right, so the character that I chose actually, the Rogue.
Brandon, you're the rogue here between you and I. You take rogues.
So rogues are essentially like exactly what you think they are. They're your thieves, they're your um, stealthy, sneaky, usually edgy characters. A lot of people like to make the brooding, I'll work alone, so lone wolf type of character. But I think rogues can be extremely fun when played really well because if you actually get the chance to put their skill set to use, you can easily move around the battlefield really quickly and just pumping out massive amounts of like single target damage. Because
Yeah,
anytime that a character is like denied, well, through 3.5, anytime they're denied like their dexterity um, bonus or anything like that towards their armor class, you can use your sneak attack. Um, in 5e, it's like anytime they're at disadvantage or anything like that, you can use your sneak attack. And it's like not even, I think it's only once per turn you can do it, but
yeah.
pumping it out every turn at later levels, it's an additional 66, 76 in addition to like your normal weapon and like any other benefits you would have on, that it gets insane real quick.
Yeah, so to put into layman's terms for people like a disadvantage or losing your dex modifier, imagine I'm fighting you. You're in front of me. The rogue can get behind you, and I don't know that he's there. He or she's there, so they're gonna be able to like hit me, like not knowing I'm there. I'm called flat-footed. Like I don't know they're there, so they have me, and they're gonna stab me in the back,
They
and they're gonna do a
essentially
bunch
have
of
a
damage.
free shot at a vital point because you're not gonna be defending against it.
Yeah. So they have it's called sneak attack, and they can just destroy things, just absolutely go at them.
Cool. Now getting into the arcane users, the really heavy ones, sorcerers versus wizards.
I'm a sorcerer. I don't know what I think. Do you
And
like
Brandon,
wizards?
do you want to grab wizard after that?
Do you do
Um,
wizards? Or are you more of a
I
sorcerer?
do not. I'm kind of doing a wizard now, but I've also done sorcerers. I think sorcerers are much cooler than wizards, personally.
I prefer sorcerers as well. So like sorcerers are arcane users. They're magic users, right? But their power comes to them just because like they exist. Like their magic's in their blood,
It's
and they can
it's
just
innate. It's innate to them. They're like born with
yeah
it. They didn't study it. They're just like a magical prodigy, essentially.
yeah, and they have less spells than the wizard at their disposal, but they have more of them. So just kind of going back and forth, the way spells work is, as a wizard, you have your spell book, right? And you have to pick your spells for the day. So if I picked one fireball as a wizard, once I use that fireball, I don't have it for the rest of the day until I prepare it again. Whereas a sorcerer, if I have fireball and I have 6 instances of that level spell, I can just start throwing fireballs out until I run out of that number spell. But like the difference is sorcerers are innately able to do things, whereas wizards need to like study really hard to do their magic, and they need to have their spell book with them, and they need to be able to sit down and read it and study it to know their spells. Whereas sorcerers just like they're shooting from the hip, just pew 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 pew. Also, edit that out. The pew 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 pew.
No, I think
Well,
that's gonna stay.
yeah, is there anything else you guys can think of on classes? I think it was a pretty good snapshot of kind of without getting really deep into dexterity and all that stuff with the classes, but just giving you a general. If you're in character select, these are the kind of guys you can think about. Again, personally, I like the rogue. I like the broody. I work alone guy. I think he's super cool and really angsty. But I see like each time you play this, you can play someone different and do something drastically different with them.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about the classes is the personality of your character doesn't have to go along with the generic tropes of them.
Mhm.
Like I've played a rogue that's like super outgoing and super charismatic and
Yeah,
super
you
like
can.
super like bubbly and whatever. And then like when I draw my sword, it's just like it's all business and I don't talk to anybody. But like
Yeah,
when I'm not doing
literally,
anything, I'm not brooding. It's just I'm there.
D&D is essentially like the world is your oyster. You can make your character can have like any sort of personality you want. You can choose like any sort of combat style that you want, and there's probably someone who's created something to be like, oh, hey, here's like a spell sword, somebody who casts spells through attacking with their sword or something like that.
That's really cool. Now, what I think is a really interesting play on the classes when you combine it with the races. Um, so yeah, I'm not sure, Brandon, Chip, whoever wants to take this. The first one, I'm thinking Gimli, son of Gloina. We're gonna jump into the dwarfs.
Dwarves. I like dwarves. I've played dwarves. I have a lot of friends that play dwarves. They are your classic, like coming out of the mountain, just like long bearded SOBs that usually focus on like just being fighters or barbarians. And their whole shtick is I'm going to run at you with my axe and bury it into your skull.
And we're gonna see what happens once I get
Yeah.
across the
Um,
battlefield to you.
but yeah, but because like they're so short and like they're not very nimble, they don't go too fast. But
With
they
the
have
feet.
they have bonuses to like Constitution, which is like um
Sturdiness, healthiness.
sturdiness, healthiness. Like they have bonuses to if I drink this and it has poison in it, I can resist it better because I'm a dwarf. Because that's what dwarfs do. They're just like sturdy. They're short, stout. They're sturdy. It's gonna take a lot to knock them over.
Yep. And then they're gonna take your gold afterwards and add it to their collection.
More or less, yeah.
Greedy,
We're
greedy
just
as
really on a
hell.
Lord of the Rings theme today. I just want to watch the movies. So elves.
That's all Brandon. I don't touch elves.
Hate
uh,
elves.
elves
Legolas.
are, yeah, elves are your typical. Everyone knows about elves. They're your essentially graceful, uh, human-esque, very human-esque, pointed ear characters. A lot of the times they're usually really good with dexterity based things and stuff like that. So your archers and moving around the battlefield and stuff like that is when you want to go for an elf because they'll generally, like I said, be graceful, quick, elegant. But
I absolutely hate elves. They're the worst class in all of Dungeons and Dragons.
they're not the worst class.
Everyone plays them as these like holier than thou, like I am an elf, I am so elegant, and my magic is so great, and everyone else is. I hate elves. I hate them so much.
No, there's nothing wrong with elves.
Awful.
We have no bias on elves here on this podcast.
Awful.
No
We
elves were
are
harmed when
pro
making this.
pro all the characters here. So this is very interesting. Gnomes, and I'm guessing it's not the garden variety.
No, so gnomes are actually not the smallest characters in Dungeons and Dragons. They're not the smallest race. I always equate gnomes to like hobbits. Um, they right? Gnomes are hobbits, not halflings, right?
No, halflings are supposed to be hobbits.
Ah, damn. Then you can talk about gnomes because I have them backwards. Then they're just like
Um,
they're just there. I don't ever play gnomes.
yeah, I don't think I've ever seen
They're
gnomes in action all that much.
yeah,
They're slightly smaller than dwarves, but obviously a little taller than halflings. As he said, they're not the smallest. Um, I feel like they're probably, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I feel like they'd probably sit in between where dwarves and halflings sit, because as you said before, dwarves are big, stocky, healthy characters, and then as we'll get to in a moment, halflings are a lot more uh, light-footed and quick. So I feel like gnomes would sit somewhere like in the middle of that, but I haven't done
yeah.
elves too much or gnomes too much myself. Sorry.
From what I've seen of other people playing gnomes, they're very charismatic and they like to use spells. Like they're enchanters, so like they're gonna be the guy that like confuses you or makes you see something that's not there. They really like their wealth, and they just kind of like sit with other gnomes and talk about their wealth and their.
Yeah, and if any of you guys have anything better to talk about on gnomes to give us a little more description, the contact information should be in the comments below and in the description on the podcast homepage on Spotify, wherever else you're getting it. So, half elves.
Half
It's an
breeds.
elf. It's a half elf
I
mixed with
hate.
something else. I'm imagining.
It's usually a human and an elf.
Mhm.
They don't have as high dexterity or nimbleness as elves, but they're not base humans.
But not a lot of difference between elves, half elf. Just a little bit of stat difference.
I think half elves still get like the dark vision or the low light vision.
Yeah,
I don't go on your elves.
half elves usually end up getting like a mixture of some human traits and then some of the elf traits. And I think one of the things that I find interesting is that usually in the description of half elves, they'll point out that to humans, half elves actually look more like elves than human, and then to elves, they'll see them as more human than elves, just like physical appearance wise.
That's really
They
interesting.
they
Yeah.
um they don't quite look fully like the opposite race, but there's like definitely more of a hint towards the other one than the one observing it, which is really interesting to me.
That's really weird. So I'm really curious as we get into something else. There's no orcs listed as races. So I'm really curious how how that plays out.
So in more advanced ways of the game, you can play as orcs. They have like level adjustments, things like that. But half orcs are usually half human, half orc. Um, how they're made, here at Tilted, we think consent is sexy, but orc tribes are usually the kind of pillage,
Orc
take what
tribes
they
are
want.
usually barbarians.
Yeah, so it's usually
You can
um,
imply what you will from that context.
yeah, but they're usually like outcasts. I mean, who wants to see an orc walking around even though they're half? They're strong. They're not usually too smart or charismatic because once again they're part monster more or less. The orcs
Yeah.
are their monsters. They're going to be like the brute of your group, the brawn,
Mhm.
the barbarian, sometimes fighters. I've seen people play half orcs as like monks or paladins, and their
I
story
saw
was
I saw
like,
one of those. A
and
friend of
there's
ours at the Geeks for Good podcast. Yeah, they did one of them. Really interesting.
yeah, and they do stuff like, okay, well this half orc was left by the mother because she didn't want it, and the Temple of Palor, took this child underneath their protection and taught them the ways of good and all that stuff. But they're
Mhm.
just like your brute, not really the talker. They put an axe into soft fleshy things and then walk away.
They're
Yeah.
charging in, breaking down your doors.
Yeah.
So hide your
Now,
husbands, hide your wife.
so my favorite class, based on the mass experience I have with the one game, the Halfling. Now this one's the Hobbit, correct, gentlemen?
Yeah, that's the
Yes.
Hobbit.
Perfect.
The
Um,
go ahead.
If you haven't seen Lord of the Rings,
as I say, the
I suggest
halflings.
it.
Their preferred classes are like rogues. They're small, they're tiny, they can go unnoticed and like get in places. But I've also seen halflings a lot as druids. They're very
Mhm.
like outdoorsy kind of. It's a very outdoorsy kind of race. And just imagine seeing like this little 2.5 foot person coming up to you being like, I'm gonna knock your teeth in, and you laughing at them, and then they turn into a bear the size of a house, and you're like that's that's the traditional thing I see halflings.
Mhm.
They like to come out of the forest and
Yeah, I usually see them
speak to the
portrayed
trees.
as rogues as well, because small size obviously harder to see as you're sneaking around, have more objects to hide behind or in or whatever, and then yeah.
Mhm. And human, I hope that all of us are very aware of what humans are. So I don't think we need to add anything. If there's any new D&D to the human race, let us know, gentlemen.
So in 3.5, I think across all editions, humans are like your generic character, right?
Mhm.
They're your Mario, your Crash Bandicoot, and Crash Team Racing. They're decent or decent to good at everything, but they don't super excel at one particular
Mhm.
thing. But it makes them really versatile. They can be any class.
Yeah.
In 3.5, you get things called feats, which are like special skills that you have, and like humans get a bonus one at the beginning of the game just because like they're so versatile and they're humans. So if you could think of any game, like a fighting game, a racing game, um, I think the best way to like an equivalence is like Crash Team Racing. If anybody's ever played Crash Team Racing, Crash Bandicoot, the flagship guy, he's not super fast, he's not super heavy, he's not super great on steering, but he's good at all of those things.
Mhm.
He's like average, maybe ever so slightly above. So like you can never go wrong with
Yeah,
picking
he's
Crash
your
in a race.
he's your B student.
Yeah,
He's
essentially.
he's your he's your B student.
He's your average B student, like consistent, always good to go to, no matter what you're trying. Just pick a human, you'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So going from where humans kind of a more generic vanilla, this is where I think the game gets really, really interesting. Getting into the alignment. Now we've got some really great examples, I think, about it, and this is a little bit more of the nitty gritty. So if you're in the middle of doing this while doing something else, this might be something where you want to pause whatever else you have going on, your Netflix or whatever, because this is where it does get a little bit difficult to understand. So you guys want to go ahead and jump in and just I'll just kind of sit back, relax, and let you guys kind of roll through lawful good through chaotic evil.
Yeah, so alignments are how your character portrays and acts in the world. So you can't have a very good character running around and stabbing civilians, being a murderer, right? Your alignment bases what you do, and there's 9 different things. So there's good, neutral, and evil, and then lawful, neutral, and chaotic, and they all have different um, things that line up with them. I usually play neutral characters or chaotic characters because it gives you a little bit more leeway. Um, but we can start from the top, Brandon. I don't know if you want to take a couple of these and we'll just go off and on back and forth.
Um, I wasn't gonna get into any specifics. I was just gonna do like an overview, but yeah,
It is really
starting at
short of the lawful good, of really a pop culture example if we have one, and just a pretty easy one liner.
all right. So lawful good is essentially like your typical stand-up hero. Superman is like probably the one that comes to like everyone's mind. He's always trying to. He won't kill any of his opponents or enemies or anything like that. He'll always try and have like the justice system take care of them. Um, he won't go around killing people willy-nilly, which is like the good section of it. So he will essentially follow all the laws. He won't go out of his way to harm anyone. He is like essentially like the standard of like this is what a good citizen is. And yeah.
Neutral good is you're still a good character. You're not doing anything that's inherently evil, like killing random people. But you are the person that comes to mind is like Batman, right? Batman, he's going to do what the right thing is, whether or not the law's on his side or not. So they could be coming after him saying like, Batman, you can't be a vigilante, or you can't go after this guy on your own, and he's going to go and do it because it's the right thing to do. He doesn't care about the law. He doesn't care about running around hurting people. Well, he's not going to hurt people, but he's usually not
He'll do it if
abiding by all the law.
necessary.
Yeah, he'll do it if necessary more. Chaotic good, that's like your Robin Hood, right? There's
Yeah.
no regard for the law whatsoever. but he's going to do what's right. So he'll steal from the rich and give to the even though it's completely against the law. He'll do it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, so the overview I was gonna give was basically lawful is your typical. The characters is usually gonna have something to do with like the justice system or like the leadership that's in place. So like they'll usually be people that'll go to like the authorities or like politicians and stuff like that. Like they want order to the world, whereas your chaotic people generally are all very selfish and only care for themselves and they don't really care if there's like an order or anything to the world itself.
On to the neutral. So you got lawful neutral, true neutral, and chaotic neutral. Um, Lawful neutral is just it's just like it's all about the law. It's all about justice,
Yep.
right? I don't care if you're a good guy or a bad guy. Um, the law will find you and justice will be served. True neutral is like a good example of true neutral is like the Ents from Lord of the Rings. Your big Lord of the Rings guy, JC.
Yep.
They really didn't until they were attacked. They weren't concerning themselves with the wars of men and
Yeah.
middle. They were just kind of sitting back, just watching. Another like pop culture example. This is going a little deep, so I don't know if everyone's going to get it, but they're like the Watchers from the Marvel universe, right? They record what's happening in the universe, but they're just sitting around, just like
They
letting
don't.
it play out.
Yeah.
They don't interfere. And then chaotic neutral, one of my favorite alignments. They're all about themselves. They're not good. They're not evil. They'll do what they have to in order to protect themselves and get themselves ahead. Um, you're Jack Sparrow, right?
Yep.
You're Jack Sparrow. Like
Oh,
I'm gonna do this
oh,
thing because
yeah.
it's bad. Because I'm gonna do this good thing because it helps me. I'm going to if I need to escape this island, I will light that boat on fire with 15 people on it just so I can get myself out, or I'll help save the princess because it'll pardon me from
Lighting that
um
boat of 15 people on fire.
exactly, yeah. So you basically look out chaotic neutrals, you're looking out for numero uno at all times.
Yep.
And then you get into your evils, which is lawful evil, neutral evil, chaotic evil. The same adjectives as before. And this is where things get murky, in my opinion. Being an evil character is really tough because your character can see themselves as good, like what I'm doing is the right thing. So lawful evil um, is Darth Vader, right? He's upholding the laws of the
Empire.
Empire. I'm not a big Star
Yeah.
Wars guy,
So
so
basically, yeah. So continuing with Darth Vader, he's basically doing evil acts for the Empire, but the Empire's obviously the ones that are setting like the laws and like the structure to the world. So in the eyes of the Empire, he would be considered like basically the Superman of like the Empire. Like this is what you should strive to be. Like he's bringing order to the galaxy. There's peace, things like that in his perspective. But yet at the same time, he's like causing like the Great Jedi Purge and making sure that like all of the Jedi's are dead. Whereas most
Order
people would see that
66.
as like straight murder, and it's like, okay, well, why is this guy so evil? But yeah, just you're still within the bounds of the law, but you're obviously committing evil acts. So
yeah. Um, Neutral evil. I know I've been talking a lot, Brandon, but the example we have for this one is in my wheelhouse. Neutral evil is like the bad guy is out for the bad guy, and he'll do whatever it takes
yeah,
to do it. And Lord Voldemort is true neutral evil. This guy is 100% like about himself, his plan. He doesn't care about the law. He doesn't care about um, causing chaos. Like his plan's gonna happen whether you like it or not, no matter what he has to do about it. He's all about him and himself. I love all. He's great. Best character, greatest character. Phenomenal. And last but not least, chaotic evil. The psychopath. He's a psychopath. It's the Joker. I don't think I even need to explain what chaotic evil is. I just say the
Yeah, I think
Joker.
yeah, he's just causing mayhem because he can. That's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. I think a lot of people that are going to be checking this out are definitely the people that are going to be familiar with it. Pretty much no matter what iteration of the Joker you see, that is the guy we're looking at.
Who's your favorite Joker, JC? I'm just curious.
It's got to be Heath.
Heath Ledger, really?
He was phenomenal as Joker.
He played the true psychopath. I'm always a big fan of Jack Nicholson.
Oh,
Phenomenal Joker. Phenomenal.
Dude, what about my boy Mark Hamill?
Like phenomenal. Joker's just one of the best villains of all time. Absolutely.
Tilted, not just another Batman podcast. All right, so jumping over, changing gears a little bit from now we've got a good basis of characters, the races, the alignments. Kind of once you've chosen your character, these are kind of you're ready to go. So now you're all lined up with your party, you're all suited up, got all your stuff, you're ready to go. Now you head out into the world. So now we're going to jump into what are you going to run into monster-wise. I know there's a lot of really, really good stuff here. So we're going to kind of touch base on what I believe are some of the, and what our guys here are thinking are some of the big, I think we have 6, some of the top ones that you're going to run into that you definitely need to be aware of. I think we have 7 actually, sorry about that. So we're just going to jump down through alphabetical order. And again, we're not going to have any images for this to use. We might, depending on how the OBS looks out, but just explain this to somebody that is not able to see it and try to explain how terrifying it's going to be as you're in game to run into one. So we're going to start with the Beholder.
All right, so I don't know how much experience you've had with Beholders, Brandon, but I've had a lot of experience with them.
I've had a lot of experience with Beholders because it personally killed one of my characters. So
Was I with you when that
a
happened?
shame. I do not think you were there for that because I think this was. I don't know where you were at for that. I just don't think you were a part of this particular campaign because I think you were busy. I think you were at school at that time or something like that. I don't know.
Probably. So Beholders aren't something you're going to run into level 1.
Oh yeah.
And if you do, just
If you do,
run and pray. Like just run
and pray. Because if he gets you, you're probably going down.
Yes. So Beholders are, and I think we're gonna have an image on the screen. It's a giant floating eyeball, with a bunch of eye stalks coming out of it with other eyeballs.
That sounds horrifying.
Yeah,
it's pretty horrifying.
It's pretty horrifying, and each one of its eyes does something different, right? So he has a big central eye in the middle, and that does like an anti-magic cone. So 120 feet out from his middle eye vision, you can't cast spells. He can't cast spells in that cone, but you also can't cast spells, right? And then each one of his eye stalks does a different spell. So they go from pretty tame, like charm monster, charm person. So this guy's attacking me, I charm him, he's not going to attack me anymore, right? Another one of his less terrifying ones is called inflict moderate wounds, which just like it hurts you, right? You ever see in the 6th Harry Potter movie when Harry uses like Sectum Sempra on Malfoy and it puts all the cuts in him? That's more or less what like inflict wounds does. It just like it hurts you. And then you get into some of the scarier ones. Like, and I'm gonna go probably scarier, scariest. Flesh to stone, he will turn you into a statue immediately.
And you're not
if you
getting out of it unless you have stone to flesh, or something else.
And even
or
then,
like
if you have if you have stone to flesh, you have to pass a Constitution save to just not die when you're turning back into a regular being. So like you're running at him with a sword, he turns his eye stalk, boom, you don't pass the save, you're a statue. Just like there's no saving.
Yep, you're done.
So that was scary. Scarier is called disintegrate. If you don't pass a another save, you get saves. All these aren't instant, but if you don't pass your save, it does I think like 100 points of damage. And if you have less than 100 points, or it like takes you to 0, like you turn into dust.
Yep, you just die
on
the spot.
like that's
just dead. So the way death works in D&D is you hit 0, you're not dead, you're like unconscious, bleeding out, and you have to -10 hit points for somebody to stabilize you or to heal you. But even then, if you die, they have your body. They can, use reincarnate or reanimate or wish or something like that to bring you back. Whereas disintegrate, if you die from it, you're just you're
gone.
You're dust. You're dust into wind. Ashes to ashes.
Left.
There's nothing left. You're gone. So that's scarier. Believe it or not, there's one more thing that's scarier than
I
that.
can't imagine.
And it's called Finger of Death.
This is the one that got me.
And basically, you have to pass a Fortitude save, and if you don't, you die. It doesn't matter if you're at. It doesn't matter if your character has 4,000 health. If you fail that save, you're at -10 and you're dead.
Yep.
Oh my god.
These things are absolutely horrifying. If you're not prepared to fight one, you're not gonna win.
So
It's
you've got to be prepared to go find one.
yeah, more or less.
Yeah.
You have to like if you're going through a dungeon and you're expecting to find like
Skeletons.
a skeletons or a mummy or a hydra or something at the end, and you roll up to the final chamber and you see a beholder, run and pray because you are not ready to fight this thing.
I turn the corner. You see a beholder. I'd like to run, please.
I leave the dungeon immediately. Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
Escape room.
more or less.
So my experience with Beholder is I was playing a character that had actually freed another character from slavery. So after a few sessions, I actually got to play that character in addition to like my standard one. And we were going through with a group, and think we were going into like a castle or something like that. And we went down into like one of the depths of the castle, and it was basically like this large prison square essentially where they had a whole bunch of cages and stuff like that. But for whatever reason, there was just like a beholder chilling in the hallways, and we had a decent amount of people, and we were pretty decently leveled, so we thought we were prepared for it. But unfortunately, my secondary character took one for the team, got a nice finger of death right to the chest.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
My,
we did manage to kill the beholder, but unfortunately,
With a
he,
heavy heart.
yeah, with a heavy heart. He did come
um,
back in a later session though. We did get to revive him, so
my first experience with the beholder was I played in a group. We were pirates. One of our friends was a were crocodile. I was a sorcerer. Another one of
The
my friends was a
Croc Crew.
croc crew. Yeah, one of my friends is a druid. And we went to this island. Um, it was like another pirate island, but it was kind of really well hidden and kept. And we sent our druid. So we were parked like outside the rocks where they couldn't see us. We sent our druid in as a seagull to spy on them to see who their leader was. And he's watching like all these fire giants and ogres and stuff like fighting with each other. And all of a sudden, like the big doors open, and we're like, okay, what's it gonna be? And a beholder came out, and our druid literally flew away, came back and said, oh no, just we're gonna let them. They can do whatever they want to do because you're not dealing with any of that. Right?
No.
And we were pretty well leveled. I think we were level like 12 or 13 at the point. We probably could have fought him if we wanted to, but we're not.
He just was like, yeah, no.
Just run away from beholders.
Uh,
That's pretty much
yeah,
it.
I instantly think Vel'Koz when you said disintegration, and
it's
with the
Vel'Koz
Pretty much.
is pretty accurate, but instead of 3 tentacles, imagine like 10 of them. I think 10
Yeah.
is generally the number that they have, and then each of the 10 eyes has a different spell, and then the main eye has the anti-magic cone.
Yeah,
that's
and
really
the really hard part about them is you think like, okay, if I just sneak up on this thing, it won't have its anti-magic field.
Nah.
But since it has 10 eyes floating around its head, it has like true vision all the way around it. So you can't sneak up on it.
Yep.
It will always see you. It's
Ugh,
just run and pray. Just run it.
that's rough. So now jumping off the Beholder, it's a really interesting character. Just thinking about it, and honestly, really terrifying that there's a chance that you could instantly die. Like
Yep.
boom, that's it. Like that's it.
It's
Yep.
insane.
So now to more of a pop culture accepted. Again, thank you, Lord of the Rings, for help popularizing a lot of the stuff in recent memory. We're gonna jump into dragons.
Oh, dragons. Dragons are great.
Yeah, I don't think we need to go really in depth because I think everybody, especially if you've seen Desolation of Smaug, one of my favorite dragon interpretations ever. Benedict Cumberbatch was incredible, but I think we all know dragons, big scary beasts, either 2 or 4 legs with wings, and most of the time breathe fire, unless you're Game of Thrones. Then they can breathe ice sometimes.
Actually, D&D makes a distinction
Spoilers, sorry
between
about that.
Yeah, spoiler warning.
D&D actually does make some distinctions between them. So for the most part, dragons in D&D will actually have 4 legs and then
Hmm.
have wings as like a separate
Hmm.
um, structure on their body. Usually, when you get into like just the creatures with 2 legs, and then the arms are built into the wings. I think they usually refer to those as worms. And so
Yeah,
they have like different levels, but yeah, dragons are your big 4-legged winged giant ass lizards.
yeah, and in D&D, like dragon is a very general term.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So like everyone
there's
thinks of dragons as like this fire-breathing monster in the sky, which is absolutely true, but that's a red dragon. There's different types of dragons.
Mm.
So you have your chromatic and metallic. One are evil, one set's evil, one set's good. And the main difference between the different colors is just like their breath weapon. So red dragons do fire, black dragons do acid
acid. Yep.
as their breath weapon. So instead of shooting a fire like a line of fire at you, it's a
Mhm.
line of like
I
hydrochloric acid
I think
that's
they're
gonna like
actually
melt off your body, off your yeah.
I think
Uh,
black dragons are actually cones of acid.
are they cones of acid?
I
Well,
think
they
so.
do acid damage.
Yeah.
Blue dragons I think do
Cold
electric
damage.
cold damage. There's one that does
Actually,
electricity,
I think white dragons do cold, blue
cold,
dragons do
yeah,
electricity.
electricity. So they do all types of like breath
Mhm.
weapons. And
There's
then
like probably like an elemental or a mountain drake.
yeah, yeah.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
yeah. And then there's
Earth.
like metallic dragons who are the good guys. They're brass, bronze, copper, gold, silver, and they're good.
They're
But
good as
there's
in you won't see them like randomly rampaging around destroying towns,
yeah,
but they'll still definitely
kill you if
mess
they want.
with people when they show up. So like if you walked into a dragon's cave and it was like a gold dragon, he's not just gonna like up and immediately kill you, but he's definitely gonna have the notion of like you're essentially a plaything to him. Like he will know that on a moment's notice, he can, if he wants to, just like wipe you off the face of the earth.
Yeah. The fun thing about the chromatic dragon or the metallic dragons, the good ones, is they have an ability that's polymorph, so they can turn themselves into a humanoid at will.
Oh, that's
So
excellent.
like so like you could be chilling at a bar and just like start drinking with this guy, and he's be like, yeah, like let's go play cards back at my place. And you're like, cool. And then like you follow him like into a cave, and then you
And
see
you're
like
like,
this
oh.
giant gold horde, and he turns into a giant dragon. You're like,
And then
ah,
you're in for a mind game because
yeah,
a lot of the metallic dragons like to seek knowledge and stuff like that. Like they'll still have like a bunch of material wealth, but they place knowledge above like a lot of material stuff. Whereas your chromatic dragons are just kind of like, give me all your stuff, and then we'll
yeah.
eat you because it can.
Mhm.
But they're all terrifying. Don't let
Oh,
anything
Yeah,
fool you.
yeah.
absolutely.
They're all
I mean,
Definitely
yeah.
not something to take lightly.
once again another creature that if you're not built, if you're not prepared to fight this thing, just don't.
Run and pray.
Dragon
Just
shamans for the win.
well, the hard part about dragons is so beholders move very slowly. So
Dragons have wings.
if you're far enough away, you can run and you should get out. Dragons are like, oh shit, oh crap, there's a dragon, run, right? And then you turn around and it's flying at like 100 feet per second at you, and you're like, well, well, here we
Buckle
are.
up, kids.
Yeah, buckle up because this is gonna get real weird real quick.
All right, now I think we're getting into more of the unknown stuff. So tell me about a drow
That's
or
all you.
drow, or if it's plural, singular, I'm not sure, but yeah, you can do
That
a little bit of a
that's
intro for them.
Brandon. That's Brandon's thing. Brandon's the drow player.
I think I tried playing a drow once in 3.5. Unfortunately, that campaign didn't last very long, so I didn't get to
Was that
experiment too much with it.
was
That's
that
the
the
one where
Underdark
the
one,
guy
Brandon?
stole my freaking bow and I never got it
Yeah.
back. I was so mad. The DM gave me like a special bow to like help me out because in 3.5, drow have what's called the level adjustment. So basically, all it is you have to treat your levels slightly different. So if you have a party of like 4 players and everyone's level 5, if you are playing a character with a level adjustment of 1, you would actually be level 4, but because of like the abilities that you would have, you would almost essentially be
Hmm.
a level 5 character. So like you'd still kind of be on par with everyone, but you'd be behind in terms of like dice based things and like earning skills and feats and stuff like that because you already have some innate feats and bonuses that would make up for that.
Yeah.
But
I
yes,
know like in 3.5 drows, they're like good with poisons.
yeah,
They're from a place called the Underdark, which is like a couple miles below the crust of the earth. they're dark elves. They're
Yeah,
dark
they're
elves.
essentially your typical
They're
dark
dark elves.
elves. Yeah, if anyone's played Oblivion, Skyrim, Dark Elf, exact same thing. Dark, like blue, purplish skin, red eyes.
Brooding.
Yeah, very um, avoidant of sunlight. They actually have a sunlight weakness because they're obviously living in the dark for so long. Like if
Hmm.
you chilled in a cave for 20 years of your life and never went outside, and then one day you walk out and it's like the brightest day that's been out for a while, you're just instantly going to be blind, can't see anything. So
Hmm.
that's some of the stuff that they have to deal with. But yeah, just typical dark elf. Um, Usually have crossbows and stuff like that when you run into them, but poison to like apply the poisons and stuff like that. So
All right, so I'm probably gonna butcher this one, but I believe it's the gelatinous cube.
Gelatinous cubes and
Yeah.
oozes.
What the hell is that?
So they're your generic dungeon monster outside of like zombies and skeletons and things like that. They prefer to live in like dark places, and they're just like a big cube of gel that merely exists to just engulf you and then digest you. They're
That's
like
horrifying.
they're like giant amoebas basically.
Mhm.
Um,
they are basically acidic jello cubes
mhm,
that if you touch them or like get sucked into them, because they generally try to grapple you and pull you inside, so you
yeah,
like start suffocating. Um, yeah, you'll, like I said, suffocate. It'll do like acid damage usually because it'll start wearing away your armor and stuff because it's super acidic. And but yeah, they're usually invisible too, so be careful of that because you can easily turn a corner
yeah,
and
just walk right
just
into one.
right in.
Yeah, they're actually pretty. Well, if you're a new player, they're terrifying to fight. Because and I've known this from playing for so long, and it's hard to play this, but like if you hit them with a piercing or slashing weapon, so if you stab it with a spear or you cut it with a sword, you don't do damage to it. You just cut it in half, and now there's two gelatinous cubes. So you have to like use bludgeoning weapons, which are like clubs, hammers, stuff like that, or
Or
just
magic.
like or magic, or just like keep cutting it till they're small enough where it just kind of disappears. But like if I walk up to it as a fighter and hit it with my sword, it's now just two cubes. It's just more
So
things
yeah,
to hit
you
me and
can just keep
digest.
doing it, and then I step on it.
Essentially.
Eventually, so what happens is like let's say it has 100 HP. When you cut it in half, now there's two of them, but they each have 50 HP,
Hmm.
and you keep having them and having them and having them, and eventually, after so long, they just kind of like just like melt.
Hmm.
But trust me, when you're level 4 and you accidentally cut a gelatinous cube in half, and now there's two of them, it's not fun. It's not fun at all. I did that
Yeah.
once as a I think I was a gnome. Yeah, I was playing a gnome, so small character, not a lot of strength, and I cut it in half, not knowing what it did, and then there was two of them, and they basically just like
Sandwich.
collapsed the pot, just like sandwiched me. It was bad. It was real.
God, these things sound terrifying. I can't imagine just like you're in the middle of like this fun campaign. You're fighting like zombies, like whatever else. Like, oh, this is great. And then you run into a gigantic acidic cube and you're like, oh my God, what do you do? I'm just thinking of myself. Thank God the podcast is called Tilted because that would just, I wouldn't know what to do. Like, there's two of them? What do you mean there's two of them? That
I
doesn't make
think
any sense.
I think the most terrifying part is like now being like for playing for so long and like having characters that are higher levels. If you say gelatinous cube, I'm like, yeah, give me like 10 of them. I would gladly run through those guys than
Yeah.
get like a beholder or a mind flayer or a dragon. Like I would absolutely prefer an army of gelatinous cubes coming at me, like a physical army compared to some of the other stuff we.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the next monster is, I believe it's a Koatoa.
Kuatoa.
Kuatoa. Thank you.
They're fish. They're fish people. They're
So just like
there's
Yeah.
there's nothing.
humanoid-esque fish that
Yeah.
can walk.
Yeah, I think we have a pic. We're gonna have another picture. I think we're gonna have a picture of all of them, but this guy's just like it's just a fish person. Like I don't know, like if you play like Hearthstone or any like Blizzard based games, it's a Murloc.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're essentially like
The
Essentially.
Legend of
clones.
Zelda.
Um,
They're not Zoras.
Okay.
They're
yeah,
they're they're
they're
they're they're they're more reptilian and slimy than Zoras.
yeah.
Okay.
They come from the Underdark just like the Drow most of the time. And they have a lot of like clerics and shaman, and their whole thing is they um capture spellcasters and like sacrifice them to their god.
That
Um,
is terrifying.
yeah, so we have a Kuatoan in our one campaign who's a friend. He's a companion in our party. And he basically said to us like, I'm gonna pray for a couple of days by this pond to my god. I'll meet you in town, which is like half a mile away.
And you're
And
like,
he came
oh,
and he
okay.
and he came back 3 days later, and he had this like brand new blue cloak and like this +1 quarterstaff and like a couple of wands. And we were like, hey, where did you get those? And his response was just like, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And like it was implied that he just like found a wizard that was traveling along and sacrificed him to his god, and then just like took his. Yeah, Kuatoans are hilarious. Maybe one day if I get permission from the DM that ran it, I'll introduce everybody to Malowick Kuatoan.
Hey, don't want to get that copyright infringement.
No, he'll kill me. He'll
Yeah.
absolutely kill me.
So mimics. This one, I've seen a picture of it. This thing is terrifying.
I think
Mm,
mimics are the most classic D&D monsters you could think of. To be
oh yeah.
honest.
A lot of
Um,
once you get
Yeah.
like a little bit into D&D and you learn about mimics, you essentially like start to see them everywhere
yeah,
because they can literally be like anything. Most often they're found as a treasure chest. So like you'll walk into a room, it'll just be a treasure chest, and you're like, this is kind of fishy, but like, there might be something cool in here. And then you walk up, and next thing you know, there's a treasure chest trying to rip your arm off.
yeah. And the thing is, like, if you so you can like cast detect magic to see if anything's like enchanted or trapped. They don't show up on that. You just gotta like bite the bullet and
So you
try.
just walk up, I kick the chest.
More or less. But they can be literally anything, like Brandon said. They can be chests, they can be chairs,
They
they
could
can
be
be
doors.
doors, they can be beds. So one of my favorite builds for a villain is you don't know he's the villain, and he invites you into his castle to stay the night, and the bed that he has you sleep on is a mimic. So you take all your armor off and you lay down and like trying to eat you. They can be literally anything.
Yeah.
And you get
I'm
to a
never
point.
playing D&D with you again.
You get to you get to a point where you think everything's a mimic,
Yeah.
and then shortly after that, you don't care if anything's a mimic because you'll just fight it. It doesn't matter to you. But when you're like level 4, 5, 6, and you're in a dungeon, you poke everything with a 10-foot stick to see if
Yeah.
it does anything. They're absolutely terrifying. I actually in the campaign I'm running now with a couple of my buddies, I made a trapdoor mimic, and it didn't do much damage to them, but it hurt somebody pretty decently. But like they didn't even think like, oh, this could be a mimic. They just like grabbed the trapdoor and like threw it open and fell halfway down the throat of this mimic. They're terrifying. They're cool. I like them.
Yeah, mimics are pretty sweet.
And now the last one is, I think, a classic D&D character to help us wrap up the show. The Mind Flayer.
Oh, dude. Mind flayers are like my thing. I love
Now
mind
get excited,
flayers.
man. Get excited.
Dude,
They have tentacles. They're great.
yeah. So basically mind flayers are from a region called the Far Realm, and it's
Oh, God.
like
Like the Upside Down.
Pretty much.
kind of. I was gonna say more like the Twilight Zone, where it's just like
Yeah.
a zone of like complete weirdness, like unfathomable like beings and creatures and stuff like that exist in this area. And their whole goal is actually to create, they serve what's called the Elder Brain, and it is literally just a hodgepodge of like all sorts of brains that have been melded together, containing like all sorts of different knowledge and stuff like that. So like their ultimate goal is to actually go out and collect like all the knowledge of like all the universes, all the realms and things like that. And one of the main things they do is they actually grapple you using the tentacles, and they have sharp like razor like teeth, like saw like teeth, and they will actually grapple you and pull your head into where their mouth is, and then actually just like eat your brain while you're trying to do stuff. And then if the like that's an actual attack that they have to use against the characters and stuff like that. And if you don't make the saving throws, you're essentially dead because like it kills you real quick. But the after they eat a um a being's brain, they actually get all the knowledge and stuff that that thing knew. So like if I was playing, if I had like a particular experience happen in like a previous session or something like that, and then a few sessions later I get eaten by a mind flayer, that mind flayer knows like everything that happened throughout like that character's life essentially. Like anything that character knew, the mind flayer now has. And so essentially they just go out, they travel the different worlds collecting like as many brains as they can. And then when they actually get old and die, they essentially go back to where this elder brain is and merge with it, so now that elder brain has all of the same uh, intelligence like that the mind flayer gained throughout its life. And they're all connected to this. So like the elder brain is constantly telling them like, hey, you need to go do this, or like I want this, and like constantly feeding them information because they're all very like psionic and stuff like that. So there are a lot of telepathy and mind powers and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're horrifying. They have a hive mind, like he just said. So like, if you're going to attack a group of mind flayers and one detects you, it's like video game guard logic. Like you know how in a video game you're sneaking along, one guard sees you. Apparently everybody in the next mile and a half knows where exactly where you are. That's a mind flayer. You sneak up.
Detected.
This one sees you. They all know exactly where you are, what you're doing.
Yep.
The whole suck your brain out. That's a one shot kill. You can have 400 health, and if this thing gets its claws on you, gets its tentacles on you, that's it. You're done. They're very Lovecrafty and very like sci-fi y.
Mhm.
Yep.
Mind flayers are really really terrifying. Um,
Picture Cthulhu but without wings. You just
yeah,
squid
more or
face
less.
thing grabs your
They
throat, pulls you in, eats your brain.
and they don't have a language, or I don't
Uh,
think they have a verbal language that people can understand. So, like, let's say you and your friends are camping in the woods playing D&D, and this mind flayer's been sent after you. What he'll do is like, with once he gets within 150 feet, he can just like telepathically talk to all of you. So, man, you're sitting around a campfire, like making your food, and all you hear is like, "I'm coming to kill you," but it's like in your head.
yeah, they
Yeah,
they I don't think they verbally speak. It's all, as he said, telepathic. So like it just essentially like forces your way into your mind, and then just like it'll either communicate with you to basically say like, haha, you're pretty much screwed, and then start mind blasting you, doing like a whole bunch of psychic damage and like driving you insane and stuff like that. Or another neat thing they actually have is they do have a written language, but
hmm
it's a special written language only for them because it requires the use of the tentacles to actually move over and like touch like all the bumps and raises. It's basically like braille to for them, but
Mhm.
they have to use the tentacles in a specific way to actually like read everything. So they can actually write things down and record them. But if like your typical adventurer or anything came across it, not a clue. You would just see like a series of like bumps and stuff on like whatever they wrote it on. But to them, they just run their tentacles over it and they're like, oh yeah, this is like where the doorway is to get back to such and such or whatever.
yeah. I think the real terrifying thing about them, going back to them eating brains, is like they don't do that. I mean, they do it for fun. Don't get me wrong. Their idea of fun is sucking your brain out. But at least at 3.5, brain is it's their food.
Yeah,
Like they need to eat brains.
yeah,
So like if you so I've played a game where I've cut off an Alithid's tentacle, which well, just one of them, which A stops them from being able to suck your brain out, and B prevents them from sucking out other people's brains. So basically, that Alithid now, or that mind flayer, is going to die of starvation. Like
jeez.
they need to,
Yeah.
like they don't eat food, they eat
If
brain.
they physically like can't grapple things and like pull it in to eat the brain, they essentially start to starve. They lose like their psionic abilities, and um, the elder brain will actually like essentially cast them out of the hive mind and cut them off, and then they're just like on their own.
Yeah, terrifying creatures. They're really fun. I've played as them.
My
I've played
personal
against them.
favorite. I absolutely love them. They're so cool.
You're such an edgelord there, Brandon.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but that was a pretty horrifying place to close it out for today. Yeah, these monsters are pretty terrifying, guys.
There's
I'm not gonna lie to you.
Go
As
for it.
somebody that's is super new, again, played one session, but like this is some pretty intense stuff.
I want to point out that these are like there's so many more monsters
Yeah,
that are
Yeah.
absolutely 100% more terrifying than the things that we've talked about.
Like the Tarask, everyone's
Like the
classic,
Tarask
everyone's
like
classic end game.
or like a Balor.
Oh, yep, I fought 2 of those at
Yeah,
the
we
same
fought 2 of
time.
those. So Balor. So just before we finish up, Balors are demons. Challenging 20, so you need to have at least 4 people level 20 in order to beat them, which is ridiculous. And they have what's called a Vorpal Sword, which if they roll a critical roll, which is a 20, if they roll a 20 and you have a head, it doesn't like do extra damage. You just get decapitated.
Yep, doesn't matter
You have
how
a-
much health you have.
Yep.
If they roll a 20 and they crit, then
You're dead.
see you
You have
later.
a 1 in 20 chance every time they roll to just instantly die. No saves, nothing. You're just dead.
this game.
If you
It's
think
great. It's
that's
not.
bad, when you kill them, then they just explode too.
They just
So
explode.
don't stand right next to them when you kill them.
I
I'm
go up and chop it in half.
I know
I'm
that
not-
from personal experience.
I'm
when we
so
killed
sorry, Brandon.
one-
I had to kill it. I had to. I
When
had
we
to kill
killed
it.
one and its buddy happened to be in the explosion, so not only did one go off, the second one got hit by the first one's explosion, died, and then the second one went off, and I was right smack dab, literally in between the middle of them.
Brandon's character was also at like -3 HP when the first one exploded. So I think our DM described it as he turned into like just a shadow on the ground.
Yep. There was just
for
a
his-
shadowy
was
outline of where my character's body was.
Yeah, it was
It's truly a
horrifying.
shame too, because I was pushing like 40 AC, AC being
Oh,
like
you're
armor
s-
class, which is
You're stupid dancing pirate. So dumb.
so. Real quick, so we didn't cover this before either. AC stands for armor class, and it's basically like how likely is someone to hit you. So you'd roll a d20, add any modifiers, and if that modifier is equal to or higher than the person's AC, then you hit. If it's lower, then they miss.
Yeah.
And
I-
I was actually somehow managing to tank a lot of stuff because they couldn't hit me because my AC was so high. But
So dumb.
the times that they did hit, it definitely hurt because I did not have
Yeah.
a lot of HP.
Maybe if we do another D&D episode, we can do like weird builds and fun stuff that we've done and just
That'd be a lot. That'd be a lot of fun. I'd definitely
talk
be
about some
interested.
nonsensical BS that we've done in the games.
Yeah, I think that'd be a lot of fun. Well, I think that was the great episode, gentlemen. I think we're gonna go ahead and close there. So that's all we've got for you today, and I hope you all enjoyed the show. Until the next time, take a deep breath, get your emotions under control, or you might just get tilted.